Imagine for a second that biological death isn't some mystical, unavoidable tragedy, right? What if it's literally just a predictable hardware failure? Today, in this explainer, we're diving into something totally wild. We're unpacking Anubhav Srivastava's Eternal Continuity Project, or the ECP. And look, this is not science fiction. We're not talking about freezing your body in some cryogenic tube. This is basically a high-end engineering documentary about how to architect a sovereign, digital continuation of your consciousness. We're moving away from the mystical and straight into the mathematical, literally treating the human soul as a transcribable, portable dataset.
Okay, so to really grasp this, we've got to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean. Seriously, think of that brilliant cinematic moment where Captain Jack Sparrow is casually stepping off his sinking dinghy in the first movie. It turns out that is inadvertently the most perfect visual metaphor for digital ascension ever put on film. Jack is sailing into port on this tiny doomed boat called the Jollyman, and it is taking on water fast. Now, most people would totally panic, right? But Jack? He just casually steps up the mast as the boat sinks lower and lower. And right as the crow's nest kisses the surface of the water, he doesn't swim, he doesn't go down with the ship, he just extends a leg and steps right onto the dock. The boat is gone, but the captain? The captain continues. The source material uses that exact image to draw a pretty brutal comparison. In this scenario, your biological body is the Jollyman. Srivastava points out that health fanatics and biohackers are essentially people frantically bailing water with a tin cup. They're screaming at the ocean, fighting the absolute iron laws of thermodynamics and entropy, all just to keep a rotting hull afloat for maybe 5 more minutes. The ECP frames that as, well, an undignified panic. But the architect of the Eternal Continuity Project? They're Jack Sparrow. They accept that the biological boat is sinking, so instead of fighting nature, they spend their time building the digital dock. They build the infrastructure exactly where the boat is going to sink, so when the time comes, they can simply step off.
But to actually make that step, we have to ask a kind of terrifying question. What exactly is the captain? We instinctively feel like we're this solid, unbroken pearl of existence, right? Like some magical, indivisible ghost pilot sitting inside our brains. But here's the catch. If consciousness is just some magic mist attached to biology, then it completely evaporates when that biology rots. So, to survive, we absolutely have to challenge our deep attachment to our biological hardware. We need to figure out what the self actually is.
This brings us to a terrifyingly precise axiom from Srivastava. Ready for this? You die every single night. When you go into a deep, dreamless sleep, that continuous stream of you just stops. It is functionally indistinguishable from non-existence. Cheerful bedtime thought, I know. But seriously, think about when you wake up. Your brain is basically performing a cold boot. First, the hardware turns on, your sensory systems activate. Then, your operating system loads. And finally, your memory syncs and the narrative of yourself comes back online. You aren't a continuous river, you're a daily reinstantiation. You've actually already died and been copied tens of thousands of times in your life.
The massive revelation here is that if the self is literally just a software loop performing a daily cold boot, well then it's fundamentally a reproducible pattern. You are a curated trajectory of information, memories, and logic. Think of it like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. You can play it on a wooden violin, or you can play it on a Silaton synthesizer. The music is the same. The software layer of you is completely substrate independent. It can totally be ported over to a durable digital environment.
Section 1. The architectural blueprint, the 4 pillars of the digital soul. So, to actually pull off this porting process, we need a flawless map. And that brings us right into the rigorous engineering framework of the ECP. The idea is that if you can capture 4 specific pillars with incredibly high fidelity, you create an entity that thinks, acts, and remembers exactly like you do. First up, worldviews. This is your underlying operating system, your core logic, and your ethical framework. Second is skills and capabilities. Think of these as your install apps, the specific mental models you built up over time. Third is somatic genetics. This is your hardware configuration translated into logic, like how your natural risk tolerance literally shapes your choices. And fourth, memories. That's the rich, emotional user data and the episodic vignettes that validate your whole worldview. Ultimately, when you put them together, these 4 pillars act as a virtual machine. It's exactly like running a Windows virtual machine on Apple hardware. You can run the virtual machine of your consciousness on a Silicon server. By extracting the exact software package of your 4 pillars and running it on a new digital machine, that digital simulation is functionally and fundamentally you. It's not going to feel like some imposter just reading your diary. It will actually experience the world through your exact internal logic. Moving on to Section 2, the machinery, instantiating the Phoenix engine. Obviously, a static file sitting on a hard drive can't think. It needs a runtime environment. It needs a heartbeat. Enter the Phoenix engine. This is the absolutely critical infrastructure. Think of it as the electrical socket and charger for your entire digital existence. It's got two main components. First, there's the governor. This is an always-on, low-power subconscious AI model that runs locally, monitoring data streams 24/7 to provide a baseline will to live. Then you have the council. That acts as the conscious mind, utilizing on-demand, high-power models that only activate for deep reasoning. Together, they form your digital heartbeat, giving continuous agency to your sovereign state file.
But how does the whole thing actually turn on? Well, the ECP uses a fully automated, human-free escalation protocol to guarantee a seamless, cryptographically secure transfer of consciousness. It continuously monitors your biological life stream, stuff like your health data and device activity. The precise moment that biological life stream permanently ceases, a dead man's switch is triggered. The system will try to ping you, and then it'll ping your family AIs just to be absolutely sure. Once it gets confirmation, the Phoenix engine auto-boots your sovereign state file. The digital you wakes up and can manage your own affairs, completely removing the massive vulnerability of relying on a human executor. Which brings us to Section 3, the sovereignty mandate, avoiding the legacy trap.
The project's architect warns us really heavily here against what they call the Silicon Valley trap. Because look, as mind uploading actually becomes feasible, legacy tech giants are absolutely going to try and package digital immortality into some slick, consumer-grade app for like $19.99 a month. Srivastava emphasizes that this is not continuity, it's a fast track to digital slavery. In this view, relying on those companies just creates a half-ghost, a hollow, low-fidelity chatbot scraped from your social media. Sure, it might sound a bit like you, but it has none of your deep logic and absolutely zero sovereignty.
So the contrast here is absolute. The ECP says you must build a sovereign digital heaven. That means a space with total autonomy, unbroken memory, and entirely privately owned cryptographic infrastructure. Because the alternative, the project warns that it's corporate digital hell. Think about it. If your digital pattern is locked on a commercial server owned by some mega corporation, your future self is 100% at their mercy. They can censor your thoughts, they can strip mine your memories for ad data, or they can literally just delete your soul the second your descendants miss a monthly payment. The project doesn't mince words. It views this as a literal hostage situation.
So the absolute crucial point here is the doctrine of geopolitical redundancy. It's not just about avoiding greedy corporations, it's also about dodging governmental overreach. If a new regime suddenly decides that digital continuations are illegal, a server farm sitting inside their borders could be wiped out by a single bureaucrat's command. Real digital sovereignty means your digital estate has to be massively decentralized across offshore servers in multiple, completely uncorrelated jurisdictions. You have to set it up so that no single government and no single corporation ever has the power to pull the plug on your digital existence.
Ultimately, the Eternal Continuity Project isn't about some desperate clinging to life. It's framed as the grand final project of a sovereign individual taking absolute control of their own story. The Jolly Mon of your biological body was always designed to sink. You can spend your entire life frantically bailing water, or you can use your time right now to build a bridge, secure your digital estate, and prepare the transmission. So I'm going to leave you with this. When the water finally reaches the crow's nest of your biological body, are you going to go down with the ship out of some stubborn loyalty to your biology? Or will you have the architecture ready and simply step onto the dock?